Good afternoon, patrons. This is Erick Mertz, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about my most recently uploaded Patreon story, A Man I Swear. Um, this is the fourth story that I've released, and one of the first stories I conceived of. And where I started with the story is just the simple new guy in town trope. I like the new guy in town story. I think you can play it for a lot of, as a writer, you can play that new guy in town trope for a lot of different effects. If you think of stories like Stephen King's Needful Things, that's where the new guy in town kind of shows up and he's an antagonist. In this story, it's a little different. Richard Shiner shows up and he's just sort of like, he shows up in town and he's unique in that like he's already bigger than Whistler's Grove, right? He shows up and he's he's trying to fit in by being a big guy. And I think that's an interesting sort of characteristic, is this like guy who's trying to fit in by just being bigger, bigger personality. And that's who Richard Shiner is. A lot of his inspiration for me just came from his roots. All right. Richard Shiner's from the Midwest. And there's something about the provincialism of a Midwest person. I always find it really compelling. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, the West Coast. I went to school with a lot of transplants. But I find there's nothing sort of more, a lot of people from California, a lot of people I know are from California. But there's something really interesting and unique to me about a person from the Midwest. If you're from Portland, or if you're from the West Coast and you go to watch college football on a Saturday morning, you're always going to run into a Michigan State, Michigan fan, or a Ohio State fan. And there's just something about like, there's something about a Midwest person that is like, they're from that place, and that place is, it is just the be all end all, I guess. And it's always interesting because you run into these like, hey, I'm from Wisconsin. Wisconsin is like where the sun rises and sets, but they've moved somewhere else. Like, so there's always something kind of interesting to me about that. So Richard Shiner is from Traverse City, Michigan. I have a colleague from Traverse City, so that's where I came up with that story, like that, just that little detail. I wanted to. We know that Canyon County, and particularly Whistler's Grove, is haunted. There's something out there in the prairie. And I wanted a new guy in town to experience it. So for me, this is I don't want to say like a very generic ghost story. It's a very basic, ghost story. It fits a lot of urban legends. It's a lot about a guy who's, has an encounter, doesn't know any better, doesn't know to suspect anything. And he goes out there and he has this encounter with something in the woods, and, he thinks it's one thing. It turns out to be something else. And I think that what makes the new guy in town's motif sort of work here is that he doesn't know any better. He wants to go ice fishing. He's a big guy in town. He's going to be this fisherman. He's going to impress all the other fishermen in town. He's going to go check out this lake to see if it's the ice fishing is as good as they say it is, right? He's just going to go check it out. He's got this sort of authoritative, like, I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm at. And I like to subvert that sort of character confidence, I guess. It's interesting to me that, like, again, like, it goes back to that idea that person in a bar in Portland, Oregon, who believes that Wisconsin or Ohio State, or this is where the sun rises and sets, but they're not in that place. They moved away. So I wanted to sort of subvert that sort of superiority that Shiner brings. Again, one of the things I had to study with this is ice fishing. I found ice fishing to be really fascinating. If you're looking to spend 20 minutes in interesting time on YouTube, I recommend looking up how to ice fish. It's really fascinating. There's a lot of ways to do it. I think if you watched movies, of upper Midwest or upper Northeast, winter living, you see a lot of people who build shacks over a fishing hole, and that's certainly a way, but there's a lot of other ways that people ice fish. It's just, again, it's fascinating. So yeah, I did a lot of research on that. And that's the main story, right? Richard Shiner comes to Whistler's Grove, and he sets up to kind of be the big fishing guy in town, and he gets that spins around on him. The story then takes another turn, of course, as we learn that Shiner doesn't just experience the paranormal. It actually, it finds a way, kind of finds a way to follow him. It gets its hooks in, so to speak. This really, for me, came from, I didn't know how the story was going to end. Truthfully, I didn't know where this was going to go. I knew the fishing part of the story. I knew the sort of reveal, how the reveal was going to be played out. I kind of saw that. I saw it in a very cinematic sense. Here's a guy telling a story and everybody's quiet, and then everybody's like, but don't you know? Like that reveal, cinematically, we've seen that before, right? But from there, there's another little tail end to the story. And this one, I just have to say that I started writing because I didn't want to end it with just that reveal, because I thought that was too convenient. I think it was important to tell what happened to Shiner, right? Because here's a guy who shows up, big man in town. He's buying drinks for the old timers. He's kind of, he's making his presence known, but he's just had that sense of himself subverted, right? So I felt like if I'm going to flip the tables on Richard Shiner, I have to give it something else. There has to be something else there. So I created this sort of other thing. And the ending, involves someone witnessing him. Yeah, I don't want to reveal the ending if you haven't read it. But I wanted someone to I wanted him to create this kind of urban legend out of him. And I think that's something interesting to me, to take the new guy in town trope where, things happen to the new guy in town because they don't know their way around, but then actually kind of make him a legend, one of those people that people in town are going to talk about. You remember the winter when Richard Shiner showed up and then this happened and he got himself in that trouble? I didn't really know that I wanted that ending until I started writing this other end. Until I started writing the ending. And it happens from time to time. And this was one of them where I was writing and I thought, oh, this is where I'm going. Oh, I'm going here. And I was really glad I did, because I think the story it just takes it really firms up that sort of new guy in town becomes urban legend sort of story that I guess I really needed to write, right? It was my way to take that sort of very, very, very standard ghost encounter story and turn it into something different. So really, if you were going to ask me what this story is about, for me, it's about the new guy in town becoming legend. When he, comes in wanting to be the big man for fishermen and actually becomes kind of the punchline in a joke. So yeah, I don't want to spoil the ending, but I think if you recognize kind of the point where the twist happens, the reveal happens for Richard, from that point on, I really didn't know where I was going. And I just kind of made it up as I went, and then I ended up really liking it. And then this is what we have now. So this is A Man I Swear. I hope you enjoyed the story. It's actually the last of the original batch of Patreon stories. I've got a whole new group going through the editing process right now. I should have some of those out in the next couple of weeks. I don't know what story comes next, to be honest. I have 2 or 3 stories that I could go with next, but we'll see how that goes. As of now, thank you very much for your patronage, and I look forward to talking to you in the next video. Take care, everybody.